Good morning, everybody. So welcome to the 22nd Annual Outstanding Citizens Award Ceremony. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Anne Marie Schubert. I'm the district attorney here in Sacramento. I'm very fortunate to have this job. So every year our office holds this ceremony, Outstanding Citizens Award, in conjunction with National Crime Victims' Rights Week. And National Crime Victims' Rights Week was started 40 years ago by President Reagan. And it's a time that we come in this country together to recognize that the challenges that victims undertake when they have to step up in the criminal justice system. It's a time to recognize what they do and the steps that they take in this effort to seek justice. When National Crime Victims' Rights Week was started 40 years ago, our president said, "For too long, the victims of crime have been forgotten persons of our criminal justice system. Rarely do we give victims the help that they need or the attention that they deserve. Yet the protection of our citizens, to guard them from becoming victims, is the primary purpose of our penal laws. Thus, each new victim personally represents an instance in which our system has failed to prevent crime. Lack of concern for victims compounds that failure." This year's theme of National Crime Victims' Rights Week is very fitting. Support victims, build trust, engage communities. This theme describes the contributions of many of the individuals that we're going to recognize today. Support victims, build trust, engage communities. This theme is also representative of this year's goal of our office, which we started this year, which is the 2021 Year of the Victims campaign that we announced earlier this year, which is designed to support victims of crime to ensure that they are not forgotten in our criminal justice system, that they are not forgotten by our legislators, our public officials, the media, and the community at large. This campaign, the 2021 Year of the Victim, includes what we call the Voices for Victims Coalition, which is made up of members of our community who are committed to achieving justice not just for themselves or a loved one, but it also includes community leaders who have advocated on behalf of crime victims and have sought to help the enhancement of public safety. Our Victims Coalition mission is to ensure that the pursuit of criminal justice reform, that the survivors and the victims of crime are not forgotten, and that their voices are heard and that they're heard loudly. Today, we will be honoring coalition members, including Paducci Vu, and Mervyn Brookins, who you'll see this afternoon, and others who are joining us virtually. I want to thank all of them for their dedication to this coalition. To help everybody keep everyone safe, obviously we're still living in a virtual world. We have to be socially distanced. We obviously have to follow protocols. So we are holding today's ceremony, similar to last year, in two different segments so that we can have all the health protocols followed. There will be 4 presentations this morning. Then we're going to take a break. We're obviously going to do everything to make sure we're following those protocols. And this afternoon, we're going to close with 2 presentations beginning at 1:30. We're also going to live stream this morning and this afternoon ceremony, so family, friends, colleagues, law enforcement, anyone in the criminal justice system that has a role can be here, whether it's in person or virtually, so that we can celebrate the recipients of today. During today's ceremony, you're going to see here on the screen what we've done for many, many years is we display our memory quilts. They were made by our Homicide Support Network and reflect the faces of the loved ones who have been lost to homicide in our community. These quilts are a reminder of the lives that have been taken by violence in our community and the painful impact of those who have to survive them. This morning, we will start with our Outstanding Citizens Award presentation. And as usual, those awardees are nominated by deputy district attorneys, by victim advocates, as well as by investigators. They're nominated because they have demonstrated, these victims and witnesses, extraordinary courage in difficult circumstances in order to testify and participate in the criminal justice system. Or they're recognized because they have gone above and beyond to protect a victim or to help a victim that is in need. So this morning, the first person that we're going to ask to come up and do their presentation is Principal Criminal Attorney Allison Dunham. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Allison Dunham, and I'm a supervising prosecutor at the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office. I'm assigned to the Major Crimes Unit, and I prosecute cases of domestic violence homicide. Today, I'm honored to introduce to you three extraordinary women, Nia Vang and her daughters, Paducci and Pahong Vu. Nia Vang is Padao Vu's mother, and Paducci and Pahong Vu were Padao's sisters. I am so incredibly proud to recognize these three women for their courage in refusing to accept a law enforcement's opinion that Padao Vu died from an accident, or worse, by suicide. I also admire the love they had for Padao Vu in pursuing justice, not only for her, but for her daughter Sophia, who will never know her mother the way she should have. On February 3rd of 2017, Padao Vu was killed when she fled a vehicle after being kidnapped by her husband, Jerry Vang. At the time of her death, Padao Vu was just 29 years old, a graduate from UC Davis, and had just begun a master's program at Sacramento State University. When law enforcement initially investigated Padao Vu's death, Jerry Vang reported that they had gotten to an argument, and she jumped out of the truck. When law enforcement asked Jerry Vang if he had a history of domestic violence, he lied and said no. Unfortunately, that lie was believed. Had his record been run, law enforcement would have discovered that not only did Jerry Vang have a history of domestic violence, it was prolific. Nia Vang, Paducci Vu, and Pahong Vu were unsatisfied with the investigation because they knew Padao Vu loved her daughter Sophia and her family, and would never have jumped from the truck unless she believed she had no choice. A Hmong community representative contacted Sacramento County District Attorney Anne-Marie Schubert and asked the District Attorney's Office to take a second look at this case. Well, to make a long story short, we certainly did. Lieutenant Kirk Campbell from the District Attorney's Office was assigned to investigate Padao Vu's death. He's here today. And he, along with his homicide investigative team, found evidence that Padao Vu was kidnapped and uncovered all of Jerry Vang's past domestic violence, and even found he had a new victim of domestic violence after Padao Vu's death. Lieutenant Campbell worked side by side with Nia Vang, Paducci Vu, and Pahong Vu as they gathered all of Padao Vu's text messages and Facebook instant messages describing the past violence she suffered at Jerry Vang's hands. This evidence was critical in securing a guilty verdict on all counts, and Jerry Vang is now serving life without the possibility of parole. Anne-Marie, I am honored to present to you Nia Vang, Paducci Vu, and Pahong Vu for this year's Outstanding Citizen Award.
Cô thọ ở trong nên chờ bố lô sẽ hỏi rong trò cụ đặc tàu ở trong thì What cho kế chân chân trò của tuần sai cho kế tua.
I would like to thank everyone for giving the opportunity to be here and for getting justice for my daughter.
Thọ bí sư của tơ xã hạt tìa của trẻ nâng trao chú trò họ á lời. Thì si vì what cho kế chân chân nhớ trò họ luôn trong nọ của theo lính thiệt tàu của tuần sai cho kế tua. Trao cho kế chân chân.
From the beginning, my family, we didn't feel like there would be any justice, but because of the city and the work that you guys have done, I felt like justice was served.
Trở giao của tuần sai tôi là lo. Đi từ ba tàu này cho kế tua. Một trò cho kế chân chân trò của trẻ nên là của thọ quá trong.
Even though my daughter may have passed, the district attorney's office have given her, her justice, and I would like to thank everyone here.
Cô sa hại trâu. Thì nâng họ luôn đĩa tế nào hạt tìa. Do nên lên tư trâu chú trâu họ á lọ cho chết. Thế nên khó cho chứng một trâu nọ chứ. Là do bà tàu này ý giả lý là bà cũ.
I want to let everyone know that even though you may feel like there's no justice or you haven't been given the right, just tell the truth and just tell the truth and justice will serve you.
What chân thọ.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'd like to introduce Deputy District Attorney Kristen Anderson for our next recipient.
You can stand right here. Mr. Holloway, please, here. Deputy. Good morning. My name is Kristen Anderson, and I currently work in the homicide unit at the District Attorney's Office. Fortunately for Deputy Ladwig, who is here today, this case did not turn into a homicide. And that was due to the efforts and the behavior of our outstanding citizen that's here today, Herbert Holloway. In June 27th of 2017, Deputy Ladwig was on routine patrol. He was stationed at the light rail station on Watt and I-80. Little did he know that day would change his life forever. As he went about his normal duties that day, he encountered the defendant, Nakori Span. Nakori Span had been at the light rail for some time, and he did not have a valid ticket. He was loitering and causing problems prior to Deputy Ladwig confronting him. When Deputy Ladwig attempted to write him a citation, Nakori Span became enraged. He was yelling profanities, and he was angry. He immediately engaged the officer. He attempted to punch Deputy Ladwig, and their verbal interaction became physical quickly. Within seconds, Deputy Ladwig was fighting for his life. Nakori Span, within 30 seconds of the fight, had grabbed the deputy's weapon. He put it directly to his jaw, and he fired one time, changing Deputy Ladwig's life forever. Fortunately for Deputy Ladwig, when Nakori Span tried to shoot him a second time, he missed. Deputy Ladwig got up and ran. He ran for cover. And even in that moment, Deputy Ladwig still performed his job. In the moments when Deputy Ladwig did not know whether he would live or die, he warned patrons, told them to run for cover. And while most people did that, as we can all understand, Herbert Holloway did something special. He took a path not traveled by many of us. And I am so proud of his actions that day, as all of you should be. He was already on the light rail, seated, ready to go home to his family, his wife who's here today. He heard the gunshots, and while everyone else ran away or froze in fear, Herbert Holloway jumped off the light rail and ran to Deputy Ladwig. While everyone else ran away, Herbert Holloway ran to save a life of a man he'd never met. He took off his shirt and he put it to the deputy's face and stopped the bleeding. And we are here today. Because of that, Deputy Ladwig is here today, which I know his wife, who's here today, is extremely thankful for that and the actions of Herbert Holloway. And he did this in a moment when Nakori Span was still on the loose. He had not been apprehended. He was not apprehended for about 3 hours. He got into a standoff with the sheriff's department, who acted honorably that day. They took him into custody without incident after a 3-hour standoff. And it was because of their actions that day as well, and the actions of our victim advocate, Colette Brown, who could not be here today, that during the course of this trial, which we did last July during the pandemic, that the defendant was convicted of all of the charges. And justice was finally served for Deputy Ladwig. The defendant was convicted and sentenced to 32 years to life in state prison. Now I have the honor this morning of seeing the meeting between Herbert Holloway and Deputy Ladwig, because Deputy Ladwig also is a unique and special person. He also, like Herbert Holloway, took a path less traveled by many of us. The first time I met Deputy Ladwig and his wonderful wife, unlike most people, he wasn't angry. He didn't ask how much time the defendant was going to get or what the punishment would be, and he didn't act like a victim. And if he did, we would have all understood it, but he didn't. Again, like Herbert, he took a path less traveled. The only thing he asked me about was if he could meet the citizen that saved his life. That's what he was concerned about. Unfortunately, we were going to start trials, so that couldn't happen. But the two of them got to meet this morning, and I'm so incredibly proud to bring them together. They are both wonderful, unique people. And again, without the actions of Herbert Holloway that day, Deputy Ladwig would not be standing here with his wife. And I know Deputy Ladwig would like to say a couple words too. Deputy Ladwig?
Morning. Herb, it is such an humbling experience to formally meet you. I know a lot of time has passed since we first met, but I can't explain to you how often I think of the human kindness that you displayed that day. I know I have said this before in open court, but I really do want to publicly thank you for your actions. You literally took your shirt off your back for me. Even though I seemed like I was probably pretty stressed in the moment, I was also extremely impressed by you. For one, without hesitation, you immediately recognized the difference between right and wrong. And two, you thought to yourself, I need to do something about this, and how can I help? And you jumped into action. In the literal lowest time of my life, when I was sitting there profusely bleeding from the gunshot wound and had just ran through a sea of onlookers that were more concerned with catching the incident on their phone for WorldStar or something like that, you really restored my faith in humanity through what you did that day. And so that I thank you. I just want to say that I also appreciate you being such an excellent witness in this case. I know that oftentimes cases like these where law enforcement is the victim, it's hard to have good and cooperative witnesses. So I thank you for being so helpful with the district attorney and the prosecution, the successful prosecution of Nikori Span. Again, I just want to say I'm honored to be here and to experience this with you. So, thank you.
Anne Marie, at this time, I'm honored to present Herbert Holloway for this year's Outstanding Citizens Award.
Yes, I'll keep it short. With the help of my beautiful wife and my sister, came up with a little something. First and foremost, glad that we can finally meet. I honorably and humbly accept this award. It's an honor to meet you, and I'm glad that you're okay. I'm glad that you healed well. Like I said, I'm gonna keep it short. I did what I would hope someone would do for my family, myself, or anyone else. I just hope that in the future people will, if nothing else, just take action. Not take videos, not issue. If it's needed, yes, but other than that, just take action. If someone is in need of help, someone is in need of assistance, just help. That's all. Like I said, I'm glad that you're okay. I'm glad that you're healed. I'm glad that this is all over with. Like I said, I humbly accept and I appreciate and I'm honored. I thank you all.
Extraordinary. At this point, I'd like to introduce Terry Ann Grimes to do our next recipient.
Rhiannon is the epitome of resilience. These are words that were shared to me by court staff after seeing Rhiannon for nearly all of 2020 be in their trial court department and hearing her story. Rhiannon is the epitome of resilience. She was 10 years old when her mother married Stan Mundy, and almost immediately he began sexually assaulting her repeatedly. And for 7 years, she sustained that abuse before she reported it to the Sacramento Sheriff's Department, and Detective, now Sergeant Kevin Darling, who's here today, did an incredibly thorough investigation. But the road to justice was so long. But Rhiannon was resilient. In 2012, a case opened in family court, and it took years before it culminated in a trial. And a visiting judge who presided over the family court trial did not sustain the petition. Instead, he found that he could not believe that a young girl would have suffered so long in silence. And so Rhiannon's worst fears came true because her brother and sister were returned to the home of a sexual predator. And it did not take long for that sexual predator to molest her sister. Everything that she had reported to prevent came true. And Detective Pam Linke from the Sacramento Sheriff's Department started an investigation, and our office filed charges in 2017, and yet still the road to justice was long. By the time I met Rhiannon, the pro per defendant had engaged in about 3 years of delay tactics, and she reminded me when we first met that this monster had taken over half of her life. But she was more concerned about her sister than she was for herself. She advocated for her sister. When it came time for them to testify, she created this beautiful basket that was filled with things to relax her the night before she testified, and a little stress animal that she could bring on the stand, magazines to occupy her in the hallways, although she didn't need them because Rhiannon was on the phone with her in the middle of her sister's testimony, encouraging her. You see, Rhiannon never thought about herself. Amidst all the investigation and the family court trials and the repeated sexual abuse, Rhiannon put herself through school. She got a degree in psychology from San Francisco State. She interned as at the San Francisco District Attorney's Office, and it wasn't long before they hired her as a victim advocate. And while she was traveling the long road to justice in her own case, she walked alongside other victims traveling their long road themselves. She advocated for other victims to make sure the fullest extent of the law was charged as felonies and not misdemeanors for the conduct committed against them, and she was their listening ear and their shoulder that they cried on when some of them disclosed to you for the first time their sexual abuse. And so Rhiannon is the epitome of resilience. And even though she was doing so much, she thought, this isn't enough. I need to do more. And so she enrolled in a master's program and is still a full-time student at Pepperdine University, getting her master's degree in psychology. And she testified in March of 2020, 1 week after taking her midterms, and the day before a pandemic was declared in our country. And the jury saw the resilience that Rhiannon had, and they embodied it themselves. And after nearly 4 months of delay from when Rhiannon testified before the jury could come back and even hear the defense's case, but every single one of them came back and swiftly delivered guilty verdicts. They didn't even have to hear your readback, they knew. It stuck with them for 4 months, her resilience. Rhiannon is an outstanding citizen not because she was a victim of horrendous repeated sexual assaults. She is an outstanding citizen because she did not let that define her. She did not let defeat in the family court dissuade her. She did not let 4 years of delayed prosecution derail her. Instead, she thought about others. She could have so easily crawled into a hole, and yet she's dedicating her life to help others crawl out of one. It's for these reasons, Anne Marie, that I submit to you, Rhiannon, for this year's Outstanding Citizen Award.
I've been thinking all week about what I should say here, and I'm still not quite sure, so please bear with me. First, thank you, Terry Ann, for sharing my story, and also thank you for the opportunity that gave Terry Ann the ability to share my story. It's something that I've considered doing for a long time. It was eight or 9 years ago, in 2 months, that I first met Detective Darling, and the fact that he is still here today to support me. Haven't really talked to him in that much time either, but that just shows like how amazing he is, and I think that can show you a glimpse into what my experience was like when I first came forward and made a report. And if it wasn't for him, and also Terry Ann really kicking it into high gear when she took on the case, and for Rafaela's support, I don't think I really would have made it through. So please don't let them give me all of the credit. But thank you all for being here, and thank you for this opportunity.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the 22nd Annual Outstanding Citizens Award ceremony. At this point, I want to introduce Assistant Chief Deputy Amy Holliday to do a very special award this afternoon.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
Good afternoon. For over 27 years, the identity of the person who attacked and sexually assaulted 3 women in Sacramento and Yolo counties went unknown. The first John Doe warrant in the state of California was filed in this case to preserve the statute of limitations on a portion of the charges. The original detectives in this case, Detective Donna Simmons, who's here today, Detective Pete Willover, never forgot this case and never gave up trying to identify the assailant. In December of 2018, an item of evidence was analyzed and used to develop a specialized DNA profile with the intent of using investigative genetic genealogy. Sacramento District Attorney's Office Lieutenant Kirk Campbell and Investigative Assistant Monica Zakowski, along with Sacramento Police Department Detective Sean McGovern, worked tirelessly using genetic genealogy to identify the suspect and ultimately locate him in Decatur, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. On June 28, 2019, the assailant, who went unidentified for 27 years, was arrested and brought back to Sacramento. 27 years later, after the first attack, detectives knocked on the door of Louetta Lumen and Jerry Welch and told them that their assailant had been arrested. I heard Terry Ann Grimes say earlier today that the road to justice is long. In this case, it was several trips around the solar system and back again. Both women, along with their family and friends, were stunned, and many other emotions soon followed. When I met Jerry Welch in her home after the arrest, I could feel that something was amiss. I met a warm, welcoming, and gracious woman who was so thankful that her assailant had been caught. But at the same time, she expressed feelings of guilt over the fact that her case had been solved, but hundreds of others went unsolved. In October of 2019, Just months after the arrest, Jerry called victim advocate Maylin Chong and I and told us that she was seriously ill. We met and I explained the process of a conditional examination, and she agreed to do so despite her physical obstacles. Over a 3-day period in November of 2019, Jerry endured a conditional examination with determination, amazing accuracy, and had her day in court, where she looked the assailant in the eye and let him know who was in charge. On the second day of the conditional exam, as we left the courtroom, Jerry called me over to her, and she said, "Did you notice what I wore today?" I looked at her more closely and then broke into a big smile. She said, "That's right, stripes. I'm sending a message. I'm letting him know where he's going and what he will be wearing the rest of his life." We shared a much-needed laugh. Jerry passed away just 8 months after the assailant was arrested. She did her part, said her piece, and I know that she's watching today, along with her family and friends. I had the pleasure of meeting Louetta Lumen and her daughter Melissa at the arraignment. That's always a crazy time to meet somebody, so we made arrangements to meet at Louetta's house. On a beautiful summer morning, Louetta welcomed us into her home. Her dog, not so much, but Louetta welcomed us. Your dog only loves you. She has a beautiful backyard, and we sat and talked. Louetta is gracious, funny, and nothing gets by her. Louetta lived in the same house where the attack had occurred, as did Jerry, and I asked her why she didn't move after this horrific thing happened to her. She looked me straight in the eye and she said, "This was the first thing I bought with my own money, and he is not going to take that away from me." As the case unfolded and Jerry's conditional exam was complete, settlement negotiations started. After several months, we were at an impasse. Louetta's daughter, Melissa, called me with concerns about her mother's age and the toll this was all taking on her. We decided to do a conditional examination with Louetta as well. Maylin and Detective Amber Lawrence and I went over to Louetta's house. I had some concerns over a particular legal issue, and I wanted to ask Louetta some questions. She saw right through my questions and knew there was a potential problem. Like I said, nothing gets by Louetta. We were still at an impasse with settlement negotiations. I wanted this person to go to prison for every last minute that I could send him. We went back and forth, and ultimately Melissa called me and said, "We want the case settled." She was upset. I got upset. The case was taking a toll on everyone, mostly Louetta. And who could fault her after we turned her life upside down after 27 years? My prosecutor herself said, "No, it's not enough time," and I dug in, stubborn as always. I went to Don Blade for advice. "Amy, it's enough." I went to Steve Grippy for advice. "It's enough. It's the right thing to do." I went to Anne Marie. "What are you, crazy? Do it." Louetta and Melissa, thank you for standing by me and for telling me that it was enough. It was what I needed to hear from you. And you had the patience and grace to wait for me until that conclusion was reached. You never wavered in your trust, and I'm thrilled that the case is resolved. Louetta was able to give a very eloquent victim impact statement, and it's behind all of us. I wanted to thank Sacramento Police Department Detective Pete Willover, Detective Sean McGovern, Sacramento Sheriff's Department Detective Donna Simmons, Detective Mickey Links, Detective Sergeant Michelle Hendricks, Detective Amber Lawrence, Lieutenant Kirk Campbell, and Monica Zakowski for their relentless pursuit of justice for these ladies. I also want to thank victim advocate Maylin Chong for her outstanding work and once again standing by me through it all. I also want to thank Yolo County District Attorney Garrett Hamilton for his help and his support during the prosecution of this case. Louetta, you're an inspiration, and I learned so much from you and from Jerry during this process. Anne Marie, I'm proud to present to you Louetta Lumen as an outstanding citizen for Sacramento County. Is she going to speak first, or we do this first? tears? No, I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine.
How many times I've thought this will be the last time I cry. Thank you for this award. The people who are really outstanding citizens are the law enforcement officers and district attorneys who stayed with this case and other cases until they brought the perpetrators to justice. I also want to acknowledge my sister survivors for their strength and courage. And my daughter, who walked every step of this way with me. Thank you so much.
At this time, I would like to invite Patty Nunn up. And Patty is, it's fair to say, Jerry Welch's best friend? One of her best friends. One of her best friends. We're honored to have here today. And so I'd like to, Anne Marie, I present to you Patty Nunn to accept the award posthumously on behalf of Jerry Welch.
Okay. We ready? Okay. All right, welcome back, everybody. I am honored to round out our day today with our last award this year, which is particularly special to me. And this is this year's what we call the Beacon of Hope Award, which is being given to someone that I have tremendous respect for, and that is Mervyn Brookins. Mervyn's probably not going to like this little presentation, but that's okay. I want to tell you a little bit about Mervyn and how I encountered him. And I'm hopeful that we have a lot of community members, family members, law enforcement folks that have been able to zoom in to see you receive this award, Merv. A long time ago, somebody once said to me that there are people in this world who come to live out loud. There are people in this world that come to live out loud, and having now known Mervyn for a couple years, there's no doubt in my mind that Mervyn Brookins came to live out loud. A few days ago, I listened to a podcast that Mervyn, myself, and Chief Hahn did a little while back on the importance of working together in our system and the relationship that our office has built, the police department's built, and you and Brother to Brother have built in this community. And I was reminded that the first time that I met Mervyn was about 5 years ago, maybe 6 now, before I was elected, and it was at a church up in the north area. I think it's called Jubilaire, right? And it was somewhat of a town hall meeting. And I think the thing that I hope had an emphasis was when the question was posed, if you get this job, are you willing to listen? And my answer, of course, was absolutely. Why would we not? And to be honest, I'm not sure I remember you, because there was a lot of people at that forum. But I definitely remember having conversations with you, and you calling me up, get my phone number and call me up and said, hey, can we talk about this case or that case? And I didn't know anything about you when I first met you, Mervyn. I didn't know your story. I didn't know your path of life. But once I learned your path of life and what you do for this community, I cannot tell you how much I respect you. And so when I talk to you about this Beacon of Hope Award today, it comes from the heart for me. I mean, I look at this quote, be a guiding light, a safe harbor, a beacon of hope, and a solid foundation for those around you. I think it absolutely defines who you are as a human being. This year's theme for this year's Crime Victims' Rights Week is this week we're celebrating across this country. And there's always a theme every year. And this year, I think, is particularly relevant because for you, every one of these phrases means something. Support victims, build trust, engage communities. Now, I'm going to talk about kind of each of these themes and what Mervyn has done and why we're here today for him. But what I've learned about Mervyn for the last 5 or 6 years, if you want to know the real Mervyn Brookins, you just got to look at his Facebook page. That's it. I know he's going to get nervous really a lot right now because he knows I'm about to show stuff from the Facebook page. Because I know you, but I think when people look at your Facebook page, you see things about you that are so, you came out to live out loud. Your wit and your wisdom, your attitude towards your community, your attitudes towards law enforcement, and what we can do together. I learned from you probably 3 or 4 years ago a phrase you use about yourself, that you are the credible messenger. And there's no question that Mervyn Brookins is a credible messenger in this community. So when I think about this, who you are, and this theme of support victims and build trust and engage communities, I start with, hopefully this is going to show, I start with this, which is, you know, there's no question that we face struggles in our communities now with law enforcement. There's no question. And for me and for this office, what I see in Mervyn Brookins is an individual that constantly wants to build that trust and engage our communities. And I look at, I mean, I know you have an incredible relationship with Chief On. I hope he's on. If he's not on, I'm sure he's smiling about this day. But these are again, just pictures from your Facebook page. And then I saw one a couple days ago which talked about, this is like in March, about, you know, these are our children that we want to make sure are safe in our communities. And you are engaging our children of our community. To me, it speaks volumes about what you're willing to do to keep your children safe, our children safe. Again, it speaks volumes. And the other thing about this one, the last line, let's talk solutions. And that's, to me, is, again, that says everything, because I know it's true. I mean, every time Mervyn calls up and says, hey, I got this case, will you guys look at this? I've got this problem, will you look at this? We do our very best to find solutions. We may not always agree, but we're always going to listen, and we're always going to do the best we can to find those solutions. And then you look at some of the things that you do with the community. Again, you live out loud, Murph. You do. I mean, what do you call this tie event? T-shirts to ties, right? It speaks volumes about what you are giving back. And this one here on the right, this one particularly warms my heart because, you know, your last line in this, showing this young child, is this one of your grandkids or is it just, oh my goodness, whoa, I love it. What's your name? Justin. This is a pretty cool picture. But your line at the bottom is, we are the foundation. And, you know, again, to me, it goes back to engaging communities, building trust, and building that foundation. And then you look at some of these other things that you see, and the real Mervyn Brookins often comes out, and what he's doing to enhance the lives of so many people in our community. And you look at what he does with youth sports. Anybody that knows Mervyn Brookins knows that his real life is all about youth sports. Whether it's cheerleading for younger girls, whether it's football for younger kids, it's really remarkable. And then you ask yourself, what exactly will Mervyn Brookins do to help the community, to help raise money, to put money back into those programs? Now, he's going to be really mad with this one, because he claims this person has not been seen in years. It's called Firecracker Dan. Firecracker Dan has not been seen in a long time, but this is what Mervyn does to raise money for his community. And it's, again, look at you. You guys, I'm going to give you a copy of this when we're done, okay? Do you still have that suit? Firecracker Dan is not. But this is the 4th of July. If anybody wants to help raise money, go out to the 4th of July stand, and maybe you'll get a glimpse of Firecracker Dan. When we talk about what you do for the kids in your community, there's a quote I saw one day. It says, "Hope is born in the faces of children." And all of what you do, Merv, for these kids in our community is hope in the faces of children. And that speaks volume. And what you do for youth programs is truly extraordinary. And hope, when we talk about, hope, these are more photos that you have put on your Facebook page. You go to the police, I know Eklund's here. Oh, Eklund, I call you Eklund. You do extraordinary work with law enforcement and you go, and this one on the left I think is from the academy, if I'm correct, and you go in and you teach law enforcement because you want that relationship to only get better. You come to our youth academies. I'm sure Rochelle has seen you there, our citizens academies. We've sat on panels together to talk about what can we do to find solutions. And then here on the right, you've told me this in both your personal story as well as what you've done since you've came back, is you go back into custodial settings and you give back and you enhance the lives of so many people that when they come out of those settings, they're going to be far better off. So you have found hope for not just children, but for adults within our community. And then we have these things, I'm going to call them Mervelations. This is where the wit and the wisdom comes from Mervyn Brookins. And this is just a couple days ago. Mervyn's post from a couple days ago. If you focus on the behavior that changes momentary, lasting change comes from changing the beliefs that produce behavior. Mervelations. It's going to be a new word in the dictionary, I guarantee you. And then we have another one, which I would consider a mervelation. Don't get frustrated. Don't give up. It's within you to succeed. It's really, honestly, for me, it's extraordinary, the wisdom that he passes on to so many people within our community. And then every so often we have these Mervelations that they're just Merv. I think the scale at my doctor's office is smoking some weed. Every time I come, it gets higher and higher. There was something about a dryer, too. I'm like, something's wrong with my dryer. My clothes keep shrinking. And I'm like, I have the same dryer. Your wit and your wisdom is really extraordinary. And I think part of the reason why it was so important for us today to recognize you is not just what you've done for the community, for building trust, but your support for crime victims, which may sometimes feel like we're in somewhat of a different role, but we're really not. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want to feel safe. We want to have a healthy life. We want to raise our kids in a healthy environment. And so this year, when our office started this Voices for Victims Coalition, a lot of really great ideas came out. Who should we include? And then this concept came out, well, why don't we include community activists that can be advocates? Because many times when people are caught up in the system, whether it's on the accused side or the victim side, they've been victims, oftentimes even if they're accused on this time. And who better to speak for that and to speak up that has that credible messenger theme than Mervyn Brookins. And so this year we started this, and the whole purpose of this coalition, as many of you know, is to advocate, to make sure we have policies and practices and laws that are balanced and actually hear from both sides of the aisle. And when we asked Mervyn Brookins, it was an absolute yes right away. And so you kind of round out those three things. You support victims, you build trust, and you engage communities. But I cannot and I would not leave today without the clear, important demonstration of Mervyn's commitment, no matter how much teasing. That would be Merv from his grandbaby's filter system. Which one did it? Which one's filters? He knew I was going to do this because I did take a picture. To me, it's about, he took it in stride. He got the text right away from Chief Hahn. Oh, we're saving that for someday. But all through all of that, his commitment to all of those things has withstood. And so for those reasons, Mervyn, when we think about all of those things, I look at this quote. You have been, without a doubt, a guiding light. No question, you have provided safe harbor from folks in the community. You are a beacon of hope, and you are providing a solid foundation for those around us. So congratulations, Mervyn. You are the Beacon of Hope Award recipient. Come on up. Very nice. And I'll give you that too.
This is beautiful.
Do you want to talk a little bit? Did I tell you you're supposed to talk?
No,
Okay. No pressure.
this is really nice. Really nice. Thank you. Thank you to you personally and to your office for presenting me with this award. It really does mean a lot. Represents coming full circle since coming home. And, you know, individual awards are usually accomplished through teams, and this is my team. I think this is the first time I've had at least a majority of my grandkids with me doing anything. I normally don't invite them to events like this, but today I wanted them to be here because they always say I don't have a job and I don't have anything to do. But I wanted them to be here so they could see the work that I do and the importance that I do it. I take them out on feeding the homeless and they don't know why. But slowly but surely I'm trying to introduce them to the selfless work so that one day that they'll be doing the same things. You know, it's through my own flaws that I came to understand the impact that crime has on communities and families, and that's my motivation for doing what I do, for reaching out and trying to be a blessing to other people. I often tell others that when I went to prison, to this day, I set a negative example. And I don't know how many people that my actions negatively impacted at that time. So today, I try to do as much as I can, as often as I can, to make sure that my actions today are leading people in the right direction. And I know building trust and building relationships with law enforcement benefits our community, as well as law enforcement. So again, thank you. I really, really mean it when I say this means a lot to me. I'm glad to see Captain Holloway here. You know, I look around the room and we started out as, you know, trying to build trust, trying to build relationships, getting to know each other. And I feel like I can look around the room now and see not just Captain Holloway, but a friend, along with District Attorney Norgard and Ho Tin and everybody on the staff. So again, thank you. I'm truly honored I'm blessed, and I look forward to continue to building this relationship.
Okay, I think that's a wrap for all of you, those out there in the virtual world. Thank you for participating and watching, and have a great weekend.